Hi, and welcome to Elemental's Landfill Lesson Material List and Setup video. The purpose of today's lesson is to learn about and experiment with landfilling, which is the main method for disposal here in the United States. For solid waste management firms and construction, that choice carries a lot of responsibility and liability. As your students incorporate into their own firms and construct their landfills, they're going to run into some of the same problems that these waste engineer firms always come across. First of all, the big problem of leachate. What is leachate? Leachate is trash juice, and that can contaminate both ground soil and groundwater that feed a community. Second, of course, is wind erosion. Now, when the wind blows, and if the landfill is not completely contained, the top of that, the refuse, can blow into a community, thereby polluting it with litter. So those are the main things that any solid waste management and construction firm are going to be concerned with, and certainly what your student in their groups are going to be concerned with. So let's go ahead and take a look at the materials that one needs to construct a model of these landfills. First, you're going to want to reference both your budget worksheet and your engineering roll sheet. These two need to be combined into a packet for each student company group. As we go through the material list, you'll find that certain materials have specific uses, and your students are going to be able to talk about those properties and use those properties to their advantage in their landfill. The first, of course, are the fill materials. Gravel, which I would make sure to have a good deal of, as well as sand and clay. I use Play-Doh that is generally not colored, but if you would like, you can also go onto Amazon and find an array of different modeling clays that will work. What you're looking for, of course, is something that is impervious to water. Secondly, you're going to look for layering materials, like your geosynthetic strips, which are really just garbage bags cut up into either squares or longer rectangles. Also popsicle sticks that will act as natural barriers and weights. These can certainly be used to create natural barriers as well, like you would find in a landfill. Lastly, we have straws that will act as PVC piping, which divert leachate into holding pools or other things when you're building a landfill. Now, how do I construct this? The first way that you're going to set up is to make sure that you have these shoebox size clear containers for each company. Within each company, you're going to want to have a block that represents a town or community. You're going to make sure that you have filled the entire bottom with ground soil. Then you're going to place at the opposite end several pieces of cotton. This is going to act as your trash that you must find a way to contain. You're going to place that in there, and then you're going to take a little bit of food coloring, and I recommend the colors purple or red. Squeeze a little bit on there so it creates a little dot, and that is going to represent your leachate. Now, when that food coloring interacts with any water, it will bleed out into the soil or into the bottom of our container model. That is how you're going to be able to tell if the leachate has not been contained, if it is contaminating the actual ground soil and groundwater like you would find after a good rainstorm. So, what I've done here is gone ahead and constructed a layered system of these materials for a landfill. I won't give you my recipe because it's a lot of fun for your students to figure out their own recipe and design. But how do I test this? Okay, so first off, let's start with the leachate test. Once you have constructed your entire landfill and have it set up in the model, we are going to pour just a little bit of water from a pitcher here. You don't have to do a lot. What am I looking for? I'm looking for things like puddling. And of course, with that comes a lot of bacterial problems and mosquitoes and pests and things that we don't want. So that's something that you are going to want to test for and see how good the design is at combating that. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to lift up and look underneath. Now I see puddling down here, but what I don't see is the color purple, which is the dye that I squeezed up originally. That means that the leachate has been contained, and even though the water is there in the ground soil, it's not contaminated. And of course you want to make sure that it never runs all the way to under here where our community or city is. Now, let's do the wind erosion test to make sure that none of the litter on the top of a landfill can get to our community. Two ways to do this. There is, of course, the modern way by blowing a hairdryer across the length of the model to see if the trash will reach all the way to your block over here. Or the old-fashioned way, which I always do, although I do recommend please putting on goggles, because once you blow that dirt up, it will whip around and inevitably hit you in the eye. Let's try it out. That trash is going nowhere. So this is a great example of a landfill that is properly contained, both the leachate and combated against wind erosion. So as you construct, your students are really going to find that they are great problem solvers, and it's just a really fun way to see how our sanitation and landfilling problems are solved. Thanks so much.